Yo, I don't want to get this tiny channel automatically content, content, no, content matched, content ID'd, whatever YouTube calls it nowadays. Whenever you see a visual and then you immediately get copyright. No, whatever. It's copyright something. I don't want someone to come up and copyright it for a single still image, but sorry. I was on YouTube and I got recommended a video of someone who made like a really impressive snow fort when it was snowing, and it reminded me of that fort from that episode of SpongeBob, where it's like SpongeBob and Patrick are playing snowball fighting, and then at the end Squidward just makes a big like fort that's like 5 times as tall as his house, and he just stays in there forever. And I remember it because it was really funny, but also for to a much lesser extent, I also remember the fact that there was a deleted scene where he was going to have a snow guillotine and cut off the head of a snowman, which is very dark for SpongeBob. He was ta- he was supposed to talk. He was supposed to talk about like how he was going to trap SpongeBob and Patrick in a snow dungeon and like use a snow guillotine to chop off their real non-snow heads, which seemed like a very dark thing for SpongeBob, especially for SpongeBob at the time. I guess unespecially for SpongeBob at the time. They had a they had an episode of SpongeBob back in the day where he literally shaved off all of his skin. So I don't think I don't think they would have gone that far, but like they would have gone more far than they would now. Nowadays it's all slapstick stuff. But yeah. So I was thinking to myself, man, how big would Fort Squidward actually be? That's the name of the snow fort he builds. He builds Fort Squidward, really tall. It was in like a SpongeBob mobile game, but like it was in the SpongeBob mobile game only for about a week around Christmas, and every year I would get to like the same point. Like the first year it happened, I got like to the same point in the side quest, and then didn't really finish it up. And then they kept adding more and more seasonal updates, but like for the same seasons, so they would overlap at the same time, and I would be like stuck at like the last step of the Fort Squidward one without having built Fort Squidward, and then I just never got it done. I don't think I ever built it, and I probably have lost my save data because it's been years and years and years. I don't even know if the game's still up, honestly. Probably it's because it's Viacom and they want money from their free game. Anyways, well, back to the main topic that I was going to talk about. I was thinking about myself, man, how large is Fort Squidward? Because there's got to be a scale of something in SpongeBob. And so I decided to do a little bit of a thought experiment. Uh, well, we know SpongeBob is the size. We know SpongeBob's size relative to Hans, the regular human hand in Bikini Bottom. And so we know that SpongeBob is the exact same size as a normal kitchen sponge. Because we see, in one episode, we see Hans grab SpongeBob, and then it transitions to him holding a real sponge that's the same size. And so we know that SpongeBob is the exact same size as a normal kitchen sponge. We can do the math on that. It should mean that Fort Squidward's relatively small. But then you got his pineapple, which would end up like a slightly different scale and all that. But then you got like Squidward lives in a moai head, so the fact that it's like 3 to 5 Squidward houses tall, that's quite a bit bigger than like 50 sponges tall. But then you run into the big problem. Squidward is like about just going from a guess, I'd say like 1.5 to 2 times larger than SpongeBob from episode to episode. It varies a little bit in the older days, and the newer days don't really care. So, you know, but like, but anyways, like, Squidward, Squidward should just be like the same scale, but like a little bit scaled up. Except there's one problem, in a semi-recent, but like still a few years old at this point, episode of SpongeBob, it was established that Squidward is canonically a giant octopus, which makes the size comparison a little bit off. Like, he's obviously scaled way, 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 way up for the episode, but like we can still get Squidward's scale relative to the scale of the giant octopus that he would be in real life, as the episode depicts. Because the episode depicts, like, oh, this is what these sea creatures actually are. Because after Steven Hillenburg left, came back, and then died, there was a rest in peace, Steven Hillenburg, by the way. Just rest in peace for him. He was a good creator, and then he died, and then they immediately desecrated his show twice over, and made a movie to promote the desecrating of his show. I shouldn't be laughing. That's bad. That's terrible. I hate Viacom so much. How is this video nearly, at this point, nearly half as long as the other video I posted? Anyways, so like Fort Squidward, we can take the large-scale giant squid that Squidward is, and then take the size of that, and then take the ratio of, like, real-life Squidward to in-cartoon Squidward, and take that ratio, and then apply that to Fort Squidward, and you would probably get the fact that, just eyeballing it, considering that the giant octopus was about the size of Sandy's tree dome. He was able to, like, wrap all around it and stuff in the episode. And Fort Squidward is very clearly, like, at least 1.5 Sandy tree domes tall. So, I'd be willing to say that, depending on what scale you use, it's either, like, 50 to 100 kitchen sponges tall, like, 5 to 10 pineapples tall, 3 to 7 moai heads tall, or about 1.5 giant octopi. That's a pretty large window. Like, somewhere between a certain amount of kitchen sponges, like somewhere between a countable amount of kitchen sponges tall and more than a giant octopus. I mean, maybe my scale is a little bit off, but you could do the measurements. You could legitimately measure. Like, sure, the scale's off from episode to episode, but you could, like, Sandy's tree dome is, like, even that, you could compare the fact that Sandy's tree dome has a great oak tree that produces acorns. So even if you don't want to use that scale, you can use Squidward's scale to the already introduced great oak tree. There's plenty of shots of SpongeBob standing next to that, and there's plenty of shots of SpongeBob standing next to Squidward, and of course there's a shot of Squidward in Fort Squidward. So you can measure the ratio between SpongeBob and Sandy's tree, then you can measure the ratio between Sandy's tree and SpongeBob, and then SpongeBob and Squidward, and then the full body shot of Squidward to the portion of Squidward visible while he's inside of Fort Squidward, and then that portion of Squidward to the entirety of Fort Squidward, which would probably still be really, really big, like probably like 2 trees tall, at least. And this is all just an estimate, but like, it's gotta be pretty big by that scale. Cause like, still, like, someone mentioned like the factor of, like, we associate Bikini Bottom as being like, as if it was human society. So if we just ignore like the real life scale things, and like the consistency of it being a cartoon, and we just say like a one story like SpongeBob's house and Squidward's house are both established to be about 3 stories typically, because SpongeBob has a main floor and then a second floor where he sleeps, and then an attic with a library and all that. Typically. Sometimes it's condensed to 2, sometimes it's expanded for other episodes. In a few episodes early on, he had a garage in the back that he only kept a reef blower in. That's all he owned. And then he bought a new reef blower and immediately made Squidward leave with it because he now owns 3 reef blowers. Don't know where the second one came from. Yeah. I think my headphones are about to die, and then if that happens, the recording will get cut off. But, like, I just really need to talk about this, because it was a really baffling subject to me. The fact that Fort Squidward can be anywhere from, like, about as tall as a person to being, like 2 great oaks tall to being potentially, like, 50 stories tall. Because if we take that pineapple scale, but then scale the size of that pineapple up to be a 3-story building, and it's 5 of those tall, that's a 15-story building made of snow. And that's a lot of snow. And don't forget about the whole circumference thing. It's a really large fort. Yeah. Bye-bye.